Hello fellow bike people! If you've seen any of my old videos in the Project Used Bike series, you know the whole goal of those videos was to show off what used bikes are capable of and how they can offer you a ton of bang for your buck. And really you don't need a new expensive bike to go cycling, you just need a good solid used bike. But as much as I was showing off how good those bikes can be, it always felt a little bit shallow to me because the bikes were either built specifically for my friends or I sold them off afterwards just to get some change for the next bike. This year, I want to update the Project Used Bike series and make it so I actually practice what I preach. So from this point on, I don't want to be selling these bikes or giving them away to my friends. I want them to go to either non-profit organizations that work with bikes or to people who genuinely need them. So first of all, talking about non-profit bike organizations, a few years ago I volunteered at Bike Pirates, which is a non-profit shop in Toronto. They are amazing people. They do everything they can to promote cycling for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to get into it. You know, they provide transportation, they provide a good community hub for people. They're exactly what the cycling world needs. The second shop I want to mention is in Peterborough. Now I've mentioned it in a few previous videos where I said I was going to go out there and donate a bike, but all of those plans got cancelled because of the whole state of the world. So this was the bike I planned to donate there. It's a nice high-end BMX, it's a little bit older, but super lightweight, loaded with custom parts. And I'm thinking, if I get a chance to go out there eventually when I still have this bike, I'll donate it then. But if not, this is probably going to go to the last of the non-profits that I want to mention, which is PMC, Peel Multicultural Council. Now they run a program called Mississauga Cycles, which is essentially to help new immigrants get on a bike and get some sort of transportation, because this is one of the most expensive cities in the country. It can be really hard to come here and just be mobile right off the bat. You know, I find what they're doing really admirable, and I want to go as far out of my way to help them as possible. So Peel Multicultural Council and Mississauga Cycles are going to be the main place that I'm donating these bikes to. And mostly they work with adult bikes, so I'm not 100% sure they'll appreciate the BMX, but you know, if there's a teenager in the group or, you know, an older person who used to ride BMX and just hasn't been able to for a while and they want to get back into it, awesome bike for that type of thing here. Now this bike does have a few interesting bits, and I plan to make another video about it later, especially the brake mounts. This brand Eastern uses a really weird design for that, so I had to jerry-rig to get the brakes set up, and I'm going to do a whole separate video showing you how to do that. So these two bikes I got as a connection from some friends of mine who do scrap metal locally. They picked these bikes up and realized they were just too good to turn into scrap metal or to sell for their scrap value, so they sent them my way. Now both of them are pretty old, they're pretty basic bikes, but they kind of fulfill the role that I've always intended the Project Used Bikes videos to do, which is to show off that used, cheap bikes can still have a ton of potential and be really useful and really fun. This Raleigh, for example, these sold at Canadian Tire for just over $100. And for what you're getting, it's an aluminum frame with Shimano components and a little bit of suspension up front. For that price, you really can't go wrong. And in my opinion, if you're just commuting with the bike or doing some casual rides and you want to lock it up somewhere, this is way less likely to get stolen than a higher end bike. And this one's a Triumph. I think these were sold at Sears back in the day. I'm not actually sure, but I think that's where they're from. It's pretty much identical to the bikes you see being sold under the Huffy name now, and they were sold as like super cycles a little while back. This basic design of all-terrain bike really hasn't changed since it was invented in the 90s. So no, it's not high performance. It's a pretty heavy bike, but it's really comfortable and it's really reliable. So no, you're not going to be able to do any real mountain biking or any racing on a bike like this, but it's practical, and again, it's very unlikely that this will be targeted by bike thieves compared to a more modern bike. This bike being all steel, like I said, it's pretty heavy, but steel does a really good job of absorbing vibration, and the steel rims on here, same type of thing. It's not a very precise material, but it's plenty tough. So these rims, even once they're a bit rusty, they'll last a good long time. Bikes like this, you accessorize it a little bit with things like a rack and some spokey nose and a kickstand and a nice bell. These are great urban bikes. And then the last two bikes in this first batch of used bikes are ones that were actually given to me by customers. So this is the same as that pink Triumph bike, except has a Super Cycle logo and it was sold at possibly a different store. essentially the same bike. Just this one's a fair bit newer and in pretty good shape. So somebody will appreciate this. And this Kuwahara. This is the one that really made me excited to make this video. This was given to me by a customer who had it tuned up here earlier in the year, and she came back, said she was moving and she needed a good home for it. So she gave this bike to me so I could find it a perfect home and make sure it was appreciated. At first glance, it just looks like any other bike, right? But other than the vague outline, this compared with those other two steel basic bikes I showed you earlier, night and day difference. Nothing is the same. So right off the bat, those are made out of essentially recycled tin cans. They're a mild steel, so a 1020 grade. They're not the best quality bikes. The ride quality itself is kind of poor. They feel heavy, they feel clunky. This, on the other hand, is made with a higher end chromoly steel. So that's got additives in it that make it a bit tougher, a bit more rust resistant, a bit lighter. And the best part is the way it vibrates. The ride quality is through the roof, better than anything those basic bikes would offer. Part-wise, we've got Shimano and Sun Tour. It's older components, but they were really built to last, so I have no worries about those. The previous owner put brand new tires and a brand new saddle on it, so those I don't have to change. And it's got some really interesting period-specific parts, like these under-frame U-brakes. That's kind of a 1988 specific thing. The Kuwahara you might have actually heard of. They were made popular in one of the most famous sci-fi movies ever, E.T. And that's that whole scene where they're, flying past the moon and E.T.'s in the basket on the BMX bike. That's a Kuwahara. And after the popularity of E.T., Kuwahara moved into more traditional styles of bikes and into more competitive styles of bikes. So the mountain bikes and the road bikes were actually used by higher level Canadian racing teams. So don't quote me on this, but if I'm not mistaken, Kuwahara road bikes were used by the Canadian racing team in the Olympics in 1988 in Seoul. And the mountain bikes, now this is weird, the website I took this information from, the phrasing was kind of vague, but I think they won the Swiss mountain biking championship in 1991 for the Canadian team on these bikes. So this bike has a ton of history, it's really good quality, and that leaves me kind of torn as to what to do with it. Because I want to make sure this goes to a proper home, somebody who can appreciate it at least as much as I can. Alright, just the last couple thoughts before I finish off the video. So everything you saw before I filmed a couple days ago, and today I just got back from test riding that Kuwahara, and yeah, that thing rides amazing. It's like lively and sprightly and like it feels good, the body position's nice on it. Like I have no complaints about that bike. And I found a good home for it. Now, I'm not sure they'd be cool with me giving out their personal information, but basically, I'm happy with this because I know that this bike is going to get treated properly. It's not going to get, left outside to rust or get stolen or something like that. Anyway, moving on. The last thing I wanted to bring up is I found two more potential places to donate the bikes. So, one is a connection through a friend of a friend through work, and then the other is somebody who I used to know a long time ago, was the pastor at a community church I used to go to. The two of them know people in, local churches who may need some bikes. So I'm happy to donate the bikes there. Now, I want to make clear, this channel is not about religion, this channel is about bikes. Your religious beliefs are none of my business. All I care about is bikes. The reason I'm okay with these bikes going to churches is that, churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, whatever it may be, any kind of, local religious organization like that, usually has a pretty good base for helping their community. and does a lot of charitable work. And from my experience, people who genuinely want to do good in the community will often get involved in churches or other local religious organizations, and they're a great place to donate bikes to. So John, the pastor whose church I used to attend, I know him personally to be a great guy, and I know he does lots of charity work. I wouldn't be giving the bikes to him in this church for religious purposes. It would be purely because I know that he does everything he can to help out his community. I know he's a good person and he'll do everything he can, so I want to help him. And I'm hoping these bikes can help somebody that he knows. But that's basically the point of all of this, is trying to find good places for these bikes to go. So like I said, I want the Project Use Bikes videos from now on to be all about paying it forward, helping the community, and getting bikes to cyclists who genuinely need bikes.